I thought babysitting was just snack duty and cartoons. I was 15 the first time I realized how wrong that idea was, how a normal, quiet house can hide something that changes you forever. What I'm about to tell you are 3 true babysitting nights that escalated from uneasy to outright terrifying. Names are what I remember, but some have been changed for privacy. If you like real scare stories, stick around. There's more after the first one. My first paid job was for Mark and Diane. Their house sat on a cul-de-sac that smelled like cut grass and detergent, the kind of place every parent says is safe. They left me with a list. Lock both locks on the front door. Keep Charlie's bedroom door cracked so he could call if he needed anything. Don't let him read past lights out. Charlie was 5 and obsessed with dinosaurs. We made mac and cheese, watched a cartoon where everything exploded into silly colors, and then I tucked him in with his nightlight glowing like a tiny lighthouse. At some point, I dozed in the guest room with the TV murmuring in the background. I remembered the late evening quiet, air conditioning, the distant hum of tires on pavement, the kind of quiet where the house seems to exhale. I woke when Charlie slid into the doorway like a shadow. "There's a guy in my closet," he whispered. His voice barely nudged the air. My stomach did that hollow flip people warn about. "What guy?" I said, a little too casual. "Chris," Charlie said. "He says he's hiding." I should have listened from the hope that kids lie, that kids mix up dreams and reality. I should have believed him right away. Instead, I said, "Did your mom tell you about Chris?" As I stood up, thinking maybe his little brain had mischievously invented a friend. He pointed. The closet door was shut in that soft way closet doors do, everything folded, a row of dinosaur shirts. Charlie's hand trembled on the frame. I moved forward and pushed the closet door open almost mechanically. For a second, nothing. Then my eyes caught the corner. A laundry hamper had been shoved at an angle against the wall, the kind with the lid that sags. Behind it, in the shadow the nightlight didn't reach, something crouched very still. The outline matched a person's shoulders. A head, not a coat, not a pile of toys. I remember the sound. It was that thin air rush of my breath and a faint scrape, like someone trying to make their body small enough to disappear. I pulled Charlie backward and closed the bedroom door, flipping the lock with a hand that would not have been steady if I'd needed it to be. "Don't open the closet," I hissed. My voice surprised me. It was louder and harder than I felt. I grabbed the phone. My fingers shook on the screen as I dialed 911. The operator asked the usual questions: address, what was happening, and her voice was a flat line of professional calm that kept me anchored. I told her a man was hiding in the house. I told her I was with a 5-year-old. I told her I could not leave the door. The operator told me to stay put and to keep the child safe. She told me police were on the way. I told her I was sure of where he was hiding. I told her I was terrified. We heard a noise in the hall then. Footsteps not ours, the scrape of a shoe. Charlie slid under the covers and held onto my arm so hard I could feel the beat of his little heart. The house felt tiny around us, the guest room's single lamp, a universe away from whatever had been crouched behind a hamper. When the police arrived, they were efficient, but the sweep took longer than the rapid beats in my chest. When an officer finally came into the guest room, he was calm in a way I had no right to be. They found the front door wide open. It was baffling. I kept thinking about the locks Mark had told me to use. Later, one of the officers told us the house had 2 locks, a latch near the handle and a deadbolt up top. The bottom one had been engaged. The top deadbolt had not. The front door had been opened from the outside. Mark and Diane arrived flustered and pale. Diane cried, hugged Charlie like she'd been waiting her whole life to take that 5-year-old back. Mark stared at me, then at the open doorway. There was anger in him at whoever had come, at the world, but he squeezed my arm and said, "You did the right thing." I didn't feel like I had. I kept thinking, what if I'd listened to Charlie sooner? What if I had checked the locks properly? The small margins between safe and not were suddenly very, very thin. After that night, I trusted kids a lot more. When they said someone's here, I believed them. And the image of that hamper, how a person could fold themselves into the shape of laundry and wait, stayed with me. It's a detail that kept replaying whenever I locked a door from then on. If you think that was bad, wait till the next one. A couple years later, I was 17 and babysitting for AJ. This family had a different rhythm. AJ was 8, skeptical and intense, the kind who didn't like hugs but liked the backseat music at full volume. The job was supposed to be easy, stay the night, because his mom had an early flight. She left me explicit instructions. AJ's favorite cereal in the pantry, no screen time after 9. I had the code to the garage if I needed to leave. I was not worried. I'd done overnight stays before. I had a fortress of experience in my head. Games, snacks, the odd lonely hour. AJ was moody. He sat in the living room playing a violent video game with the TV light, washing his face in flickers. He glanced up at me occasionally, like he was measuring my patience. When it was his bedtime, he refused to say much. I put him to bed the way you do with kids who are closed off. The book, the small talk, the low light. I slept in the guest room again because that's what most families did if you weren't staying in the child's room. Sometime after midnight, I woke to a pressure at the edge of the room, like a presence standing just in the doorway. I thought it was the house settling. Then I saw him. AJ was standing at the foot of the bed in his pajamas, backlit by the streetlight through the blinds. He held something behind his back. My brain supplied reasons. I was not in full awake mode. Maybe he wanted a flashlight, I told myself. Maybe he wet the bed. I sat up slowly. AJ, I whispered. He didn't answer. He simply took a step closer and slipped the object forward. A long, thin glint caught the lamplight. It was a kitchen knife, no cartoonish prop, a solid, heavy blade this family used for preparing meals. When he turned toward me, I saw his face. It was not playful. It was blank and small in the way a child's face sometimes is when they are shut down. For a moment the world narrowed to the white strip of metal and AJ's dark eyes. I told him to put it down. He didn't. I remember the sound of my own voice, calm but sharp, as if insisting would change reality. I locked the guest room door and shoved a dresser against it with my shoulder because the lock felt flimsy in my hands. I dialed AJ's mom. Her yelling when she picked up the phone folded through the line like a slap. "Get out," she said. "Lock the door. Don't let him out." I called 911 too, because I couldn't do only one thing. The dispatcher asked if anyone was hurt. There was silence on my end because no one was hurt yet, and that fact was a small miracle I could not take for granted. AJ screamed and then ran. He darted past the guest room, shirt flapping, and then into a hallway. I kept the dresser against the door until my arms burned. An hour seems eternal in a locked room. It felt like intermission in a play that I could not stop. I could hear distant footsteps, shouts, a car pulling into the driveway. Someone, his dad, his ex-husband, arrived and took him away. The family's dynamics were complicated in the way most families are. The details don't matter as much as the raw fact that someone came into that house with a knife and an 8-year-old held it in his hands. I left before sunrise because staying felt impossible. I never went back to babysit for them. I still have images from that night that queue up without warning, a knife glinting in dim light, AJ's small shoulder blades, the way the guest room door sounded when I pushed the dresser against it. You think of children as innocent, uncomplicated. That night taught me that danger can be close and incomprehensible. It taught me to never assume that a kid's silence is simple. That was the second night. If the first was a shadow folded behind laundry, the second was an immediate, up-close threat. The next one was something different, an invasion while children slept. And the hardest lesson about how thin the line is between the known people around you and danger. By the time I was 21, I was babysitting for my sister. She trusted me completely. Emma was 7, Lucas 5. Her house was the place we'd grown up in, familiar creaks, old wallpaper, a back balcony overlooking a maple tree. She left a glass of water on the table and a list of bedtime routines. "If you need anything, call me," she said, pressing her lips together like she was apologizing for leaving. The kids had been clingy the whole evening. They asked for extra stories. They fell asleep quicker than I expected. About an hour after I tidied the dishes, both kids started whispering from their rooms. Lucas was first. "I saw you in my room," he said, eyes wide under the covers. "What do you mean?" I asked from the hallway. "When the light was on, you were there." His voice was tiny and raw. I felt the hairs on my arms lift. I walked into Emma's room, saw the nightlight, the stuffed rabbit, the slightly crooked picture on the wall. Everything looked normal. I shrugged it off as sleep-talking, a weird trick kids do. Yet when Emma told me the same thing 10 minutes later, someone was doing peekaboo from the balcony, but they were taller than Daddy, the doubt set in. Two kids saying the same thing at the same time is not coincidence. It's proof. I went to the balcony and pulled back the curtain. The railing looked empty. The porch light was off. I told the kids to stay in their beds and flicked on the hall light. Later, when I went up to check on them again, there was movement on the far side of the yard. A tall shape crossed the dim alley between our house and the neighbors. It moved casually, like a person who belonged there, like someone who was not trying to hide. Then I saw it more clearly. From Emma's room, the angle caught a man at the balcony door. He was the height of a full-grown adult, wearing a long coat. For a pulsing second, he put his hands over the child's eyes as if playing. It looked exactly like peekaboo. The absurdity of it, something so simple and small, made my throat close. I grabbed them both, socks slipping on the wooden floor, and we ran to the neighbor's house across the street. My sister's neighbor opened the door with a face that registered fear as quickly as hospitality. We sat on his couch in our socks and pajamas and watched from the living room window as the man walked away from the house, not hurried, not flustered, like he had all the time in the world. I called 911. The operator told me to stay put and not to engage the man if he was still nearby. I watched the empty street, the maple tree, and a person dissolve into the dark. Police came, but not fast enough for the timeline that was ticking in my chest. The kids were safe, but their trust was broken. After that night, my sister installed cameras, motion lights, deadbolts, the whole list of things you hope you never have to consider. The house became fortified, not by paranoia, but by the desire to feel normal again. Watching a stranger leave a house I was supposed to protect was a new kind of violation. There is a ghost of anger that hangs from that memory. Anger at the delay, at the casualness that allowed someone to loom in a child's doorway and walk out again. But there was also the physical fact of safety. We were alive and together, and that was everything. Across these 3 nights, patterns emerged. Ordinary houses are not always safe. Children are not small liars. They often notice when adults ignore things that are wrong. Locks can be misunderstood. One secured latch does not equal a closed door if a deadbolt is left undone. Emergency responses can take longer than the heartbeat rushing in your ears. And the emotional aftermath, lost sleep, hyper-awareness, the decision to stop doing what once felt normal, can last far longer than the incident itself. There are practical things I learned the hard way, not because they are guarantees, but because they matter in the small margins. Trust a child who says something is wrong. If a child reports someone in the house, treat it as urgent. Double-check locks. Don't assume one deadbolt is enough. Ensure both locks are engaged. Keep your phone close and know how to reach 911 quickly. If you can get to a neighbor's house safely, do it. Pre-program emergency numbers. Tell parents where you are and make sure you know escape routes that don't require heroics. I also learned boundaries. I stopped babysitting for a while. Not because I'm afraid of kids, I still love them, but because those nights left echoes I could not shake. The fear crept into places it didn't belong. A closet that closed too softly, a shadow that leaned too long. I had to step back and rebuild my sense of safety before I could ever agree to be responsible for someone else's child again. None of this is to push you into paranoia. It's a call to practical vigilance. Doors are small hinges on big consequences. Kids are more observant than we think. Lock what you can. Listen when they say something's wrong, and don't underestimate the power of calling for help. If you're a parent, think about the instructions you leave. If you're a sitter, set clear rules with the parents and ask where the extra locks are. If you're a teenager like I was, don't let pride make you dismissive. There's no shame in being cautious. It's bravery to recognize danger and act. These nights change me. I carry a lot of images with me. Charlie's small whisper, AJ's blank stare, the man who played peekaboo on my sister's balcony. They are not cinematic monsters. They are messy, human intrusions into the routine nights we expect to be ordinary. They taught me the value of listening, the fragility of comfort, and the quiet courage it takes to do the smallest sane thing: lock the top deadbolt. I told you these stories because they're true and because they matter. If you've ever been a babysitter or a parent, you know that the job comes with small risks that can become huge in an instant. Share your own babysitting horror in the comments if you feel comfortable. There's strength in the stories we trade, and sometimes the best lessons come from someone else's worst night. If you want more real stories like this, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe, trust the kids, lock both locks.